Hello and welcome to another episode of Queer Peer Reviews. I'm your host Jamie, and here we'll be reviewing queer media, good, bad, and ugly. Today with me is my co-host Bruce.
Hello, and here at Queer Peer Reviews, we review your favorite and not so favorite LGBT media, going from characters, comic books, TV shows, and movies.
Today we'll be reviewing Netflix's 2020 original movie, I Am Not Okay With This, and you might recognize two of the characters from Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 of It, Sophia Lillis and Wyatt Oleff. So let's start off with this. Who is Sydney Novak? She describes herself as a boring 17-year-old white girl, which isn't exactly the case. Little to Sid's knowledge, she has powers, which I guess you could relate them kind of like puberty, because they are triggered by emotional stress, anger, embarrassment, all these other things that Sid starts to discover throughout the series. The first instance of Sid discovering her powers is when she hangs out with one of her friends, Dina.
Dina is Sid's best and only friend in high school, who later on starts dating Bradley, who also Sid hates.
Sid only wants to hang out with Dina and only Dina, and she just hates Brad for some reason. She's just jealous.
Indeed. So it's like a vibe out of there.
Some sort of vibe, you know.
The instance of her powers start happening when she looks at Bradley with such hatred and causes his nose to bleed. And then sort of shocks her in surprise, thinking, did she do that herself? Or is she just imagining things?
No, she totally couldn't have made Brad's nose bleed. That's insane.
No.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
no.
why the show would exist?
Yeah. So after she makes Brad's nose bleed, she angrily walks home, and that's when she meets Stanley Barber, who is her neighbor, who's just never hung out with her before. But he has a huge crush on her, which she doesn't feel the same way about him for some reason. So he follows her home, he introduces himself, and that's when their friendship begins. So Sid starts getting really jealous that Dina is hanging out with her new boyfriend Brad more than she is. She starts realizing that Dina starts acting different, she's hanging out with the more popular kids, and Sid's just not there for that. She then starts hanging out with Stanley more.
So the friendship between Sid and Stanley becomes stronger as they both hang out with each other. They start doing car rides to schools. They even hanged out at the football game, which both did not want to hang out, but they just wanted to go there to sort of make fun of Brad. And during those events at the football game, Brad gets injured. And in a way, Sid was also kind of pleased to see that happen.
Yeah.
And which also leads to Dina being dateless for the dance.
That's when Sid states in her journal that she didn't really want a boyfriend, she just wanted a boy so she could relate to Dina more. Just something to have more in common with her best friend Dina.
Oh my God. I'm sorry, I'm learning this now. Wait, that makes more sense.
You just realized, yeah, there's a quote that she says, I really don't want a boyfriend, I just want to hang out with Dina. And just being able to have a boyfriend, like she has a boyfriend, makes her more relatable to Dina.
Oh my God. That's a revelation to me. I'm sorry. That makes more sense. Okay.
Yeah, after the football game, Sid goes back to Stanley's house, they hang out, and eventually that leads to them hooking up.
Yeah, out of nowhere. They start hooking up out of nowhere, which leads to, I guess, more of an awkwardness between each other a bit, considering what just happened in those events.
But yeah, the next day after Stanley and Sydney hook up, she tells her best friend Dina, like, oh yeah, had a great time with him, he's really good at doing all this sex stuff. But in her head she's thinking, no, I did not like it was really awkward. But I don't know why I didn't like it.
We still don't know why.
I don't know why I didn't like it.
We still don't know why.
So after spilling the beans to Dina that she had sex with Stanley, she then mentions the party that she no longer has a date to since Brad is now injured, which leads to, I believe, Dina asking Sid. Oh, no, wait. Sid asked Dina, hey, like, why don't you go to the party with me instead? Just a casual question for Dina, but in her head, Sid's like, please say yes. Please say yes.
So at the party, Sid and Dina show up, along with Stanley, who's also probably wearing the funniest suit I've seen. And awkward, I guess, but it catches his personality.
Yeah.
And very casual stuff at the party happens.
Sid does stick more with Dina during the party than she does with Stan, who
Yeah, that's right.
Stan is kind of like, oh, like, why doesn't she want to be with me? Like, did I do something wrong? But no, she just wants to dance with her best friend Dina. While they're all hanging out on the couch, the song Jesse's Girl comes on, which if you know the lyrics, the guy who sings talks about he wishes he had Jesse's girl, which you can relate that to Brad and Dina, that Sid wishes she had Brad's girl. So that's when they start dancing together. Sid gets like a little bit of a gay panic because Dina starts unzipping her sweater, which she's like covering her body with because she doesn't really like showing off herself to people at parties. But after that happens, they start dancing and Brad walks in. All of a sudden, Sid's demeanor just drops. She crosses her arms. She gets all defensive.
And then what happens at that point, Dina and Brad, they sort of, I guess, doze off with each other, leaving Sid alone once more, and Stanley also feeling alone just as well. And then what happens furthermore is that Dina and Brad have a fight, and Sid figures that out when she goes into the bedroom and sees Dina crying on the bed.
So the comforting friend that she is, of course, she's gonna talk to Dina through her issues. She lies down next to her, they talk, and I forget what is said in between, but they just slowly start getting closer and closer and closer, which leads to
Sid going in for the kiss.
But unfortunately, Dina pulls away, which gets Sid really embarrassed.
She rubs it off, it's like, oh, we were just drinking, it's fine. But Sid does not feel that way. And out of anger, she storms out of the party, goes in the forest, and probably lets out her strongest shockwave scream ever.
Yes. So like we said before, her powers are triggered by all these different emotions, this really powerful one being heartbreak and embarrassment. So she winds up knocking down a bunch of trees in the middle of the forest, which next episode we learn that Stanley witnessed this whole thing and now wants to kind of be like Sid's mentor.
So finally giving in to Stan's pleas, Sid decides to let him train Sid's powers and see how they're affected, how they're triggered, and see if she can control them. So Sid's plans to do this was to go to a bowling alley and I guess teach her how to maybe knock some pins down with her mind.
Yeah, so a lot of it's just really unsuccessful. She's not able to trigger her powers on her own will. So he asks Sid, when have your powers ever happened? And that's when she reveals to him, oh, whenever I'm upset, angry, or embarrassed.
And so Stanley decides to just say like these very, very hateful comments or very negative comments to Sid, which at first Sid was not affected because it was just mostly insults against her.
She knew that he was trying to just piss her off.
But then he started getting more personal, even though he didn't realize that he thought it was helping.
So Sid's biggest trigger is her family, and particularly her father, who committed suicide for unknown reasons at the time. So when Stanley brings up her family and starts talking about how her father committed suicide and you're never going to find out why, that's when
she grabs 2 bowling balls and nearly kills Stanley with both of them. Where Stanley congratulates, like, oh, we figured it out, but clearly Sid was not pleased with whatever he said there, and she storms off.
Yeah, just took it way too far.
Too far.
So the next day, the group winds up getting detention. That includes Brad, Dina, Sid, Stanley, and this other girl named Jenny.
The way they got this detention was that the teacher caught Brad cheating off of Dina's test, and thus also putting Dina in detention. Sid, being the noble girl and having the huge crush on Dina, she also calls out this teacher in defense for Dina, where she also gets attention, and for some reason Stanley pops up, throws shit at the table, and
calls the teacher a motherfucker.
And that was hilarious.
Just to get detention to spend more time with Sydney.
Pretty much.
His love, his dear love.
And trainee, apparently.
So during detention, they decide to pass the time. Jenny, who actually came back to school after being in rehab for some amount of time, she decides that the group should play Fuck, Marry, Kill. And she turns to Dina and goes, would you rather fuck, marry, kill the principal, Stanley, or Sydney? So she picks to marry Sydney. That makes Sydney all giddy and whatnot. So when it's Sydney's turn to play, Jenny says, oh, nobody would ever actually have sex with you. That's when Sydney storms off and leads to her next encounter with her powers. She goes to the library and she feels some sort of presence around with her, which causes her to get really scared and destroy the library, which leads to her asking Stanley for help because she discovers there's security cameras in the library and they need to steal that USB of security footage back.
So they pull off the funniest heist possible. which included recruiting Dina. Recruiting Dina, they also had to disclose that they could not mention to Dina what was in the security tapes. They just needed to help.
Yeah, so they kind of make up the lie that Sid and Stanley had sex in the library, and that's why they need to get the security footage off of the cameras.
So yeah, and this led to the principal sort of running around like crazy through all the noises. They do successfully retrieve the USB drive that contains the security footage of the real incident, and taking it with them.
Yeah, so at the end, after they successfully retrieve the security footage, Sydney walks into the girls' locker room where she finds Jenny and Brad discussing some sort of secret, which she learns that Jenny had sex with Brad at that birthday party that she went to with Dina, where she kissed Dina. And Dina walks in and says, "Hey, like, what's going on?"
And so Sid, taking the opportunity because she hates both Jenny and Brad, spills the beans for Dina, telling her that Brad cheated. And of course, Brad, being the typical straight white male, does not take the blame at all and blames Sid for ruining the relationship for some reason.
Yeah, so the next day at school, when she's at her locker, Brad actually threatens Sydney and says, "Hey, like, you gotta stay away from Dina. She's mine, blah, blah, blah."
Typical straight white male stuff.
Yeah. And then later in the day, she learns more about her father. So when Sid returns home, she goes down to her basement, which is where her father killed himself. She finds his belongings, and that's when her mother comes down to talk to her about what exactly happened the night her father died. She reveals that her dad started having visions because he was a Marine. He had PTSD, but he started seeing things, hearing things, which Sid starts to relate what happened to her in the library. So after learning all this, Sid runs up to her room and she wants to write all this down in her diary, which she learns is missing. So as we all know, Sid's powers are triggered by anxiety, embarrassment, fear,
frustration,
which she is now feeling all at once because this diary with all of her biggest secrets is now missing, and who could possibly have it? So she tries to remain positive. She talks to Dina and they kind of talk through what happened. She apologizes for kind of leaving her behind for Brad, and they decide they're gonna go to the homecoming dance together.
So Sid decides, yes, with Dina, she'll definitely go to the dance, but also leaves Stanley in the dust because Stanley asked Sid out as well. And comes to a shock later on when they go to the party that Stanley sees that Sid showed up, even though she said she was not going to go.
So after Sid apologizes to Stanley, they go up to Dina and they're like, "Hey, like, let's go dance." But a slow dance comes on. That's when Dina takes Sid by the hand. They go out to the middle of the dance floor together, and they start talking about that night of the kiss.
And then the conversation, Dina mentions that she did not like it, which implies that she didn't mind the kiss, which is also very much good news for Sid.
Yeah, because for some reason, Sid also enjoyed that kiss. She can't quite put her finger on it, though.
But it was what was supposed to be such a great night turns into worse when Brad goes upstage, takes out a mic, and starts calling out Sid.
Dun, dun, dun.
And the worst part is,
he has her diary.
And starts saying everything that was said on the diary, explaining that she kissed Dina in front of the whole school.
Sid starts getting really embarrassed. Things start shaking.
He starts calling her slurs.
Yeah.
And then, right before he mentions her powers, his head blows up because of Sid's anger and frustration, which leaves everyone at that dance shocked, mortified, and covered in blood.
Yeah, especially Sid. So Sid is covered in blood. She is casually walking out because she has no idea what she just caused to happen, and she is so freaked out. She doesn't want to make things worse than exploding Brad's head off. She walks out of the school and starts walking home.
Pretty much like the scene from Carrie, she starts walking back down, going just anywhere away from the school, and starts running, and ends up, in a forest.
I think either a watchtower or a water tower.
It was probably a watchtower for forest, and just sort of just takes in what just happened, and then
Then a mysterious shadow-like being appears behind her. She turns around and he says, "It's time, let's begin."
And that was the figure that was following Sid the whole time.
Yeah, so she wasn't just imagining things, there was somebody following her this whole time.
That is what ended. And that's the end of the season.
Alright, so let's get to the ratings here at Queer for Reviews. We will be rating each thing we review out of 5 different categories, giving us a grand total of 100.
Let's start with representation.
Alright, and so for representation, how well did I Am Not Okay With This represent the queer community?
Well,
I give it an 8.
I give it an 8.2.
Nice. So the reason why I give it an 8, I heavily related to all the gay panic that Sid had throughout
Oh yeah,
the
I
series.
felt that.
Yeah,
I felt that.
without even realizing that it was because she liked Dina. Before I came out, I had so many instances where I had fixations, not exactly fixations, but I just had a very strong bond with somebody, and I didn't realize why I wanted to have that bond like so strong. It was, in reality, I had a crush on this person, and all of Sid's gay panic, but not realizing it's a gay panic, is very, very realistic to me.
Yeah, I've experienced that the same thing too. I only put 8.2 just to be better than you, but but otherwise, yeah, no, it was very well done, especially with all the emotions, like what she experienced. I felt that in my soul a bit. Like, whoa, like I said, the secondhand embarrassment just really hits hard.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of queer people also had some sort of Stanley Barber in their life.
Yeah.
I had a Stanley Barber, followed me everywhere, but nothing the same. Give or take a few details. Give or take a few details. So next, we're going to be moving on to our closet scale. If we were still in the closet, how much would this film make us feel more comfortable coming out? So for the closet scale, we give it...
Wow, look at that.
Wow,
Same.
high five.
Hey. Oh,
no.
You dropped your 7.
So why did you give it a 7.5?
Well, considering almost like she went through hell with everything, and especially with the whole, with Brad like outing her out to school and her mortified and everything, it makes you feel like that's one of the worst nightmares for a lot of people still in closets. It's just being outed without their permission, and even so, but most of the time, everyone's pretty accepting of what she goes through, which makes more sense of like the reactions from the school. Everybody, there was nobody laughing or anything. It was just shocked at what Brad was just doing. Mm-hmm. So overall, because it's modern times, so it's not like anything old-fashioned. Everybody's pretty like used to whatever. Mm-hmm. But I think it's just more like what the fear she was feeling, and like in her perspective, it was like the worst thing that ever happened to her. Yeah. So that would set back a little bit, like, oh, I don't want to experience that type of fear. So, yeah.
Yeah. I only give it a 7.5 because I feel like there wasn't a lot that had to do with Sydney coming to terms with her queerness. Mm-hmm. I think it was more with the superpowers that she had. But at the same time, the whole discovering yourself and realizing, oh, maybe I didn't like that boy. I just liked that boy because I felt like I had to like that boy. Mm-hmm. It was very relatable. And then, like you said, the whole being outed in front of the whole school, just terrified, don't want to go there. But I don't give it anything lower than a 7.5 because I feel like it was very accurate with Sid and her reactions to everything.
Pretty much.
Nothing that would lead you astray with coming out.
No.
Besides superpowers.
Next up, originality. I mean, how many white girls would like telepathic powers exist? I guess it's just more the context that she can't control it completely. The other ones can do it, no fucking problem though.
You are like Papa.
You are like Papa.
And we give it 6.8 and a 7. So why do you give it a 6.8?
So when it comes to originality, I'm gonna sound like a comic or like a TV show or like a TV nerd. Her powers are anything new. You know, it's basically like telekinetic powers, or so, even though she can't control it. But there's like a lot of other characters that are similar with that. But it's a little more original because these powers seem to be more like a metaphor for what she's going through, puberty and all. So that's one part of the originality, and even so, story-wise too, is interesting.
Like Bruce said, I have also seen this places like Life is Strange, Stranger Things. Specifically with Life is Strange, it is a queer character who has these telekinetic powers similar to what Sydney has. But I like how they executed it. I feel like they had their own spin on it, just like with her dad's suicide and those being related and just everything going on within the story. I think they did a good job taking a common story and spinning it on their own original way, but still, I give it a 7.
And I give it 6.8.
Next up, we have writing. So, for writing, we give it...
8.
Ooh,
oh, we're close.
Tables have turned.
It switched from the first rating. Okay.
So I give it an 8.2. I just really love how they wrote Sid's character with being somebody who doesn't realize that they are, in fact, queer. I heavily related to that. If the writing is relatable, then that really does give it a better rating. Just Sid having this crush on Dina and not realizing it's a crush, just written really well.
The father's mysterious type of, backstory was also very interesting. Like I was just really listening on the whole backstory just so I can get a better understanding of what's going on with her powers, and the revelation is just as intriguing and really made me want to learn more about that.
Yeah, and season 1 really does leave you on a cliffhanger, and you really want to know more about the story.
Exactly. Our overall rating?
Dang.
We did it again! 8.5. And we didn't look at each other anymore. So yes, I gave it an 8.5 overall, story-wise, and especially how each character is written very well, and also as a way to help support Sid's development into sort of being, secluded only to herself, except with Dina, to being more open, hanging out, especially through more public spaces. And don't you agree?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm a really big fan of coming of age stories and just the uniqueness of this one. I really enjoyed. All the characters were super lovable. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed the series. As soon as I saw the ad for it on YouTube one time, I just immediately rushed to Netflix to watch it. I binge watched it all in one day because all the episodes are roughly 20 to 30 minutes long, and I just wish there was more.
Yeah, and honestly, I can't wait so we can do another review for season 2. Oh yeah.
Oh.
Netflix canceled it.
All right, and now for our QPR total. We are gonna get our total from our straight ally crew member, AJ. AJ, hit us with that gay shit.
All right, so the QPR total is 77.9 out of 100, leaving us with a 77.9% rating.
All right.
And
okay.
I would call that about a C.
About a C.
C+.
C+.
There you go, C+.
Yeah. Or, like Jordan said, a B-.
Wow. That's pretty good.
All right, so thank you for joining us again for another episode of Queer Peer Reviews. As always, follow us on social media, Instagram, Twitter, subscribe to us here on YouTube.
Please subscribe to us.
In the description below, we will have links to the Trevor Project as well as other fundraisers you can donate to.
It should have been season 2.
Should have been a season 2 Netflix. Thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching.
See you next time.
See ya.